Your mother vanished. Who's footing the bill? Louise's sharp cry sliced through the restaurant's din. Every patron's gaze snapped to our table. It was her birthday, her grand celebration, a gathering of 20 hand-picked guests. I had just stood up, gathered my handbag, and headed towards the restrooms. Except I wasn't going to the washroom. My destination was the exit, where a waiting taxi beckoned. I left the ensuing pandemonium behind, the raised voices, the bewilderment, the unpaid check of $450, and my son, Jamal, frantically searching for me between tables, while Shanice wailed that I had shattered her perfect evening. But that was merely the prelude. When Jamal illuminated the living room at precisely 2 in the morning, the sound that erupted from his throat was one of utter despair because I was right there, seated calmly in my favorite armchair, 3 packed suitcases by my side, and a file of documents on the coffee table, anticipating their arrival. I knew they would come. I knew that after abandoning them at that opulent eatery, with all their companions as silent witnesses to their humiliation, they would arrive in a fury, demanding an explanation. Perhaps they presumed they could compel me to return, to rectify the situation, to pull out my credit card as I invariably did. However, that night I was no longer the same woman they had treated with disdain for years. That night, Jenkins, at 68 years of age, had ceased to be the accommodating mother. I had transformed into someone entirely new, someone who had finally mustered the fortitude to declare, "Enough is enough." Yet, to comprehend how I reached that juncture, I must recount the entire narrative from its inception. It is imperative that you understand this was not an impulsive decision or a fleeting moment of madness. As Jamal vociferously explained to the restaurant manager, this was the culmination of months, perhaps years, of suppressing my pride, of feigning indifference to hurt, of convincing myself that a mother's love necessitates surrendering everything, even one's own self-respect. It all commenced approximately 2 years prior. Jamal contacted me one Sunday afternoon, his voice laced with that distinct tone he employed when he desired something. I was intimately familiar with that inflection. I had heard it countless times since his adolescence. Now, however, Jamal was 35, possessed a secure position as a sales manager, and had a wife who earned a substantial income as a graphic designer. "Mama, I need to ask you for a tremendous favor. It's rather urgent." My heart immediately began to pound. My thoughts leaped to accidents, illnesses, dire predicaments. A mother's instinct always anticipates the worst first. "What's happened, son? Are you all right? Is Shanice all right?" Yeah, everyone's fine. It's just, well, we had an unexpected expenditure with Shanice's car, and this month we're a bit tight. Could you lend us $500? We'll repay you next month. Promise." $500. My Social Security benefit amounted to $800 monthly. I lived from paycheck to paycheck, but he was my son, my only son. How could I deny him? "Of course, Jamal. I'll transfer it tomorrow. I'll wire it to you. You're the best mom in the world. I promise we'll repay you soon." He never did. The subsequent month, it was an air conditioning repair, costing $300. Then Shanice's birthday, $200 to contribute to the festivities. Next, an extravagant gift they wished to present to a significant business associate of Jamal's. Then, their wedding anniversary. Subsequently, new furnishings for the living room, as the existing pieces no longer complemented the interior design. Within a 6-month span, I had lent them in excess of $3,000, and each time I tentatively broached the subject of them beginning to make some repayments, Jamal would regard me with disappointment. Mama, I thought you did it because you love us, not because you expected something in return. I didn't realize you were keeping tabs. Those words inflicted a profound sense of guilt, making me feel like the villain, a petty, selfish mother who placed a monetary value on affection. Consequently, I ceased to mention the money, and they discontinued their pretense of ever repaying it. Their visits also underwent a transformation. Previously, Jamal would come over on Sundays for coffee, to converse, to inquire about my well-being. Now, he only appeared when he required something, and Shanice rarely accompanied him. When she did, she remained fixated on her phone, responding with monosyllables if I attempted to initiate a discussion. One day, they arrived unannounced. It was a Friday evening, and I was preparing my simple supper, a chicken broth with vegetables. I heard the key turn in the lock. Jamal had always possessed a duplicate set of my keys for emergencies. "Hey, Mama, we brought Chinese food. Are you hungry?" Shanice entered behind him, carrying several shopping bags. For an instant, a wave of joy washed over me. They had thought of me. They desired to share a meal with me. "That's so thoughtful, son. I was just cooking, but don't trouble yourselves with it. Save your food for tomorrow." "Nah, we're ravenous." They settled at my dining table as if they were in their own residence. They retrieved the food containers and served themselves onto my plates. I sat with them, offering a smile, attempting to engage in conversation. "How was your week at work?" "Fine, Mama, fine." "Shanice, pass the soy sauce." "Jamal, did you remember the wine we left here last time?" "Sure did. It's in Mama's fridge." "Mama, could you get it for us?" I rose to retrieve the wine. It was an expensive bottle they had left weeks earlier. I poured 2 glasses for them. They offered me none. They consumed their meal rapidly, conversing amongst themselves about subjects I did not comprehend, names of individuals I did not recognize, places they had visited where I had not been invited. I felt like a specter in my own home. Upon finishing, Jamal leaned back in his chair with a contented sigh. "Mama, I need to discuss something important with you." There it was again, the tone, the request masked as a casual conversation. "Shanice and I are contemplating a getaway for our anniversary. Something special, 3 years married. We discovered an incredible all-inclusive package to the Bahamas. The issue is, it's this month, and with all the expenses we've incurred..." He left the sentence unfinished. He didn't need to complete it. I understood precisely what was coming. "How much do you require?" $2,000. I realize it's a substantial amount, Mama, but it's our anniversary. You only get married once. $2,000. Nearly 3 months of my pension. "Jamal, I don't have that much readily available at present." For the first time that entire evening, Shanice lifted her gaze from her phone and stared directly at me. There was a distinct coldness in her eyes. "You don't have any savings?" "I have some set aside, but it's for emergencies. And what is more crucial than your own son's happiness?" "Jamal works incredibly hard. He deserves a vacation. We would do the same for our parents if we possessed the means." The manner in which he addressed me, not as Mom or Mrs. Jenkins, but simply Ara, as if we were acquaintances or worse, as if she held a degree of authority over me. Allow me to see what I can manage. Thanks, Mama. We knew we could rely on you. They departed approximately half an hour later, taking the remaining wine and leaving their used dishes on the table. I remained seated, gazing at the remnants of the meal they had brought, which I had not requested, which they had consumed with gusto, and for which now, in a perverse twist of fate, I was expected to deplete my savings. That night, I wept for the first time in months, not entirely from sorrow, but from something more profound. It was the sensation of having become imperceptible, of existing solely as a means to acquire something. Yet, I was not prepared to concede it at that moment. I still persuaded myself that this was the norm for modern families, that grown children required support, that I was being overly dramatic. I remitted the $2,000 2 days later. The sojourn to the Bahamas spanned a week. Throughout those 7 days, Jamal dispatched precisely 3 text messages to me. The initial one was a photograph of them at the airport with the caption, "We've taken off, Mama." The second was an image of the beach accompanied by the text, "This is amazing." The third arrived on the final day. "Returning tomorrow. Love you." 3 messages in 7 days, purchased with 2 years of my accumulated savings. They did not contact me by phone even once, not to ascertain my well-being, whether I had eaten, or if I required anything. I, who had to seek medical attention that week because my blood pressure had suddenly surged, and I spent 2 days experiencing such severe dizziness that I could barely leave my bed. Alone. Completely alone. My neighbor, Brenda Taylor, was the one who transported me to the clinic. She barely knew me. She owed me nothing. "Your son cannot accompany you. He's away with his wife." "I don't wish to trouble him." Brenda regarded me with an expression that suggested pity. She offered no further commentary, but her silence conveyed more than any words could. When Jamal and Shanice returned, 2 weeks elapsed before they visited me. They arrived one Saturday afternoon, bronzed, relaxed, brimming with energy. They brought their luggage. "Mama, we're staying for the weekend. They're fumigating our building and the odor is unbearable." "Right? No problem." It wasn't a request. They were already walking in, depositing their belongings in my spare room, which I utilized as a sewing area. "Sure, son. My home is your home." Shanice passed me by without even a greeting. She proceeded directly to the bathroom with her cosmetic bag. I heard the shower begin to run. "Mama, do you have anything to eat? We're famished." Jamal reclined on the sofa and switched on the television. "I have ingredients to prepare something. What are you in the mood for?" "I don't know. Anything. Something good." At the hotel, the food was incredible every day. A pang of something unpleasant heightened within me. I had financed that hotel, that exquisite cuisine, that luxurious vacation, and now they appeared at my residence, expecting me to continue catering to them as if nothing had transpired. But I remained silent. I never uttered a word. I prepared chicken pasta, utilizing the last of the quality ingredients in my refrigerator. I set the table attractively, complete with linen napkins. I desired them to feel welcomed. I wished for them to recall that their mama could also cook proficiently, that I could create delicious dishes, that I held value beyond merely the financial assistance I could provide. When I summoned them for dinner, it took them 10 minutes to arrive. They were engrossed in something on their phones, sharing laughter. They sat down and commenced eating without uttering a sound. No expression of gratitude, no compliment on the meal, nothing. "So, how was your trip?" Did you enjoy yourselves? Amazing, Mama. The hotel was five-star, private beach, top tier, everything. Shanice truly got to unwind, right, darling? Yes, precisely what I needed. The spa was spectacular. I had massages daily. A knot formed in my stomach. Daily massages funded by my money while I was alone, dizzy, struggling to reach the doctor. And how are you, Mama? Jamal posed the question without looking up from his plate. It was an automatic query, akin to asking about someone's well-being without a genuine desire for the answer. Fine. I had to see the doctor because my blood pressure elevated, but I'm feeling better now. Oh, that's good. You're better, Mama. This pasta is a bit dry. Don't you have more sauce? I swallowed. I had just informed him of my illness, and his sole response was to request additional sauce. Shanice placed her fork down on her plate with a sigh. I can't eat any more. I'm so full. Ara, do you have dessert? No, Shanice, I do not have dessert. What a shame. At the hotel, they had an exceptional dessert buffet. You could have as much as you desired. She rose from the table, leaving half the meal untouched. Jamal followed suit shortly thereafter. Both settled in the living room to watch a film, leaving me alone with the soiled dishes and the uneaten food. I washed everything in silence. I put away the leftovers, cleaned the kitchen. From the living room, I could hear their amusement. They were watching a comedy together, clearly content. That night I slept restlessly. I could hear their movements in the adjacent room. I could discern their hushed conversations. At one point, Shanice's voice escalated slightly. No, Jamal, we've already asked her for too much this year. Give her some time. Well, what do you expect me to do? She's my mama. That's what mothers are for. Yes, but we need to be more strategic. We can't ask her every month. She's going to figure it out. She's going to catch on. Those words struck me like a physical blow, as if there were a deliberate scheme, as if I were a resource to be managed. I remained awake until dawn, gazing at the ceiling, sensing something within me begin to fracture. On Sunday morning, I prepared breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and freshly squeezed orange juice. I set the table with renewed care. Jamal descended first, yawning, his hair disheveled. Morning, Mama. Smells good. Shanice appeared 20 minutes later, impeccably groomed with straightened hair and full makeup, as if posing for a photograph. Is there coffee? Yes, I've just brewed some. She poured a cup and sat down, her attention fixed on her phone. She made no attempt to sample the meal I had prepared. Ara, this coffee is instant. Yes, it's what I always drink. Oh, I only consume whole bean coffee. Instant upsets my stomach. Don't you have another kind? No, Shanice, this is all there is. She sighed dramatically and pushed the cup away. Jamal ate rapidly, remaining silent. Upon finishing, he wiped his mouth and met my gaze with that familiar expression. Mama, may I speak with you for a moment? Certainly, son. Shanice immediately stood. I'm going to pack our bags. We were left alone. Jamal fidgeted with a napkin, avoiding direct eye contact. Mama, I am aware we've already requested a considerable amount from you this year, and believe me, we appreciate it immensely. But something has arisen, and we require your assistance one more time. My heart began to accelerate. A sense of dread constricted my chest. What has happened? Nothing serious. Relax. It's just that, well, we've found an extraordinary apartment. It's ideal for us. Larger, in a superior neighborhood, with a gym and a pool. The predicament is they're asking for a 2-month security deposit, and we only have enough for one. Jamal, I have no further savings. I provided you with all I possessed for the trip. I know. But don't you have a credit card? Or could you procure an advance on your social security? I cannot do that. I am already operating on a tight budget with my monthly income. For the first time, Jamal met my gaze directly. A hint of frustration flickered in his eyes. Mama, I simply don't comprehend. You reside alone. You have no substantial expenditures. What do you spend your money on? On sustenance, Jamal? On medication? On utilities? On maintaining this residence where you both frequent whenever you please? Okay, please don't become upset. I was merely inquiring. I assumed that, as a family, we could support one another. I have assisted you on numerous occasions. Yes, and we are grateful, but this is different. It's an investment in our future. At some point, you will age and you may require us to care for you. This is about ensuring we have a comfortable place where we can all reside. The word all sounded hollow, as I was not included in that collective. It was merely a pretense, an artful method of instilling guilt. Allow me to consider it. How much time do you require? Because the apartment won't remain on the market for long. A few days, Jamal exhaled, clearly irritated. Fine, but try to decide swiftly. Yes. He departed to locate Shanice. 10 minutes later, they were at the door with their luggage. Thanks for everything, Mama. We'll call you this week. A perfunctory peck on the cheek, not even a hug, and they were gone. I stood at the doorway, watching their car recede. The house fell silent, a heavy, poignant quietude that amplified my sense of solitude. I entered the room where they had slept. Towels were discarded on the floor. The bed was unmade. They had used my expensive shampoo, the one I reserved for special occasions. The bottle was nearly depleted. In the bathroom, I discovered the toothpaste tube squeezed from the center, its cap left ajar, Shanice's hair strands in the sink, makeup smudges on my white towel. I tidied everything like an automaton, changed the linens, organized the space, eradicating every vestige of their presence. Yet I could not expunge what I had overheard the preceding night. We need to be more strategic, as if I were a challenge to be overcome, an obstacle to be managed. That night, seated in my empty living room with the television off, the only sound the incessant ticking of the clock marking the passage of seconds, something within me shifted. It was subtle, a mere whisper, but it was present. The burgeoning doubt, the uncomfortable question I had been evading for months. When did I transform into this individual whose value is contingent upon what she can provide? The subsequent days were peculiar. Jamal contacted me 3 times that week. 3 times within 7 days, more than he had communicated with me in the preceding 2 months combined. Yet, I was aware it was not due to concern for my health or because he missed me. It was because he sought a response regarding the funds for the apartment. Mama, have you given it any thought yet? I need to know because the owner is pressuring us. Jamal, I truly cannot. I have no means of procuring that sum. But did you attempt to obtain a loan? There are avenues available. Mama, I will assist you in finding a loan. He intended for me, a 68-year-old woman with an $800 monthly pension, to incur debt to finance their opulent apartment. I am not going into debt, son. The silence on the other end of the line was protracted and awkward. All right, I understand. I suppose we will have to explore an alternative. He disconnected without a farewell, without expressing affection, without inquiring about my well-being. He simply hung up. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing from him. Absolutely nothing. Not a call, not a text message. It was as if I had ceased to exist the moment I became superfluous to their needs. I spent my time fixated on the telephone, awaiting a call. Every time it rang, my heart would leap, anticipating it was Jamal. But it was merely telemarketing solicitations or bank notifications. The loneliness began to weigh upon me in a different fashion. It was no longer merely physical solitude. It was the profound sense of being inconsequential to anyone. One afternoon, Brenda extended an invitation for coffee at her residence. I rarely accepted such invitations as I perpetually harbored the expectation that Jamal might appear or contact me. However, on that particular day, after 2 weeks of silence, I agreed. Her home emanated the comforting aroma of cinnamon and freshly brewed coffee. Photographs adorned every surface, depicting her children, her grandchildren, her travels, all captured in moments of joy. It presented the appearance of a genuine family. "How long has it been since you last saw your son, Ara?" 2 weeks. He's occupied with work and other matters." Brenda nodded thoughtfully as she poured the coffee. She remained silent, but I observed a slight compression of her lips. "My children visit every Sunday, sometimes during the week as well. They call me daily, even if only for 5 minutes. I recognize my good fortune." A pang of envy, of hurt, and also of shame surged within me. Jamal is exceptionally diligent. He carries significant responsibilities. Of course, but a phone call does not require an excessive amount of time, does it? I took a sip of coffee to avoid having to respond. Brenda perceived my hesitation. "Ara, forgive my intrusion into your personal affairs. However, I have observed you over these past few months, and you concern me. Always waiting, always available. And he only appears when he requires something. It's not entirely like that, is it? When was the last time he visited solely to see you, without requesting financial assistance, without staying over due to a predicament, without needing anything? Simply to be in your company?" I was unable to offer a response, as I genuinely could not recall the occasion. Children lead their own lives, it is natural. Yes, they lead their own lives, but decent individuals do not forget their origins. They do not exploit their parents as if they were automated teller machines. Brenda, he does not exploit me. He is my son. I assist him because it is my desire. All right, I apologize. I have no intention of arguing with you. I merely wish for you to recognize that you possess a value far exceeding what he leads you to believe. I returned home, her words echoing in my mind. You possess a value far exceeding what he leads you to believe. Was it the truth? Or was she merely a meddling neighbor who failed to grasp the intricate connection between a mother and her son? That night, Jamal finally telephoned. "Mama, how are you?" "Fine, son. And you?" "Good, good. Hey, we secured the apartment. My boss ended up lending us the money. We were short. We're relocating next weekend." "That is wonderful news, son. I am pleased for both of you." "Yeah, we're incredibly excited. Hey, could you assist us with the move?" We require an individual to oversee the reception of the moving professionals at the prior residence, while our attention is dedicated to unpacking and arranging our new dwelling. Would Saturday accommodate your schedule? Absolutely, I will be present. Splendid. I shall transmit the pertinent address to you. Your arrival is anticipated at precisely 8 o'clock in the morning, as the moving crew adheres strictly to their schedule, and you all will be present at the new location. Correct? As previously stated, our presence is imperative at the new dwelling. This is precisely why your attendance at the old one is so crucial. Understood. Thank you, Mother. You are truly exceptional. He disconnected the call. He failed to even inquire about my availability for that specific time or whether I had a means of transportation. His assumption was my perpetual readiness, as is customary. On Saturday morning, I roused myself at 6 o'clock. My journey to their former apartment involved 2 bus transfers. The chill permeated my bones, and a persistent ache in my knees intensified with the damp air. I arrived at precisely 7:50. The moving crew materialized at 8 on the dot. 3 robust men commenced the loading of boxes and furnishings with minimal discourse. I remained, fulfilling Jamal's request to supervise, ensuring no item was overlooked. By 11 o'clock, the dwelling was entirely vacated. I stood amidst the unfurnished living space, observing the indentations on the floor where sofas had once resided, the faded rectangular outlines on the walls where artwork had been displayed. I dispatched a message to Jamal. The relocation is concluded. All is in order. His response arrived 2 hours later. Acknowledged. Thank you. Please entrust the keys to the concierge. That was the extent of his communication. No inquiry regarding the process, no invitation to survey the new premises, no concern for my transit home. I delivered the keys to the concierge and departed. My return journey necessitated the same 2 bus routes. I reached my home at 3 in the afternoon, utterly depleted, my knees swollen and a severe headache pounding. I prepared a comforting cup of tea and settled onto my sofa. My gaze fell upon my mobile device. No further correspondence, no incoming calls. It was at this precise juncture, enveloped by the profound stillness of my solitary dwelling, that an internal shift occurred. It was not a dramatic outburst, devoid of tears, but rather a sudden, sharp clarity, akin to a lightning strike. I realized I was not fulfilling a maternal role. Rather, I was functioning as their hired hand, their financial resource, their crisis management unit. I was not their mother, for motherhood merits affection, and what I received was far from it. 2 weeks hence, a notification arrived via text message. It was less an invitation and more a formal declaration. Mother, Shanice's birthday falls on October 15th. We are hosting a celebration at the Red Velvet Bistro at 8 o'clock in the evening. Kindly confirm your attendance. The Red Velvet Bistro, a decidedly upscale establishment. The kind of venue where a single dinner can easily approach $60 per individual. And given Shanice's disposition, a simple meal was highly improbable. I confirmed my attendance, not from personal inclination, but from a lingering, albeit misplaced hope that a family gathering might offer an opportunity to rekindle the bond I perceived had fractured with my son. The days preceding her birthday were peculiar. Jamal maintained a complete silence, yet Shanice initiated contact 3 times. Have you procured my gift yet? The question caught me entirely unprepared. The thought had not crossed my mind. Not yet, Shanice. Is there anything specific you desire? Well, I have compiled a wish list at Neiman Marcus. I can furnish you with the link. The items vary in price, but naturally my preferences lean towards those in the $200 to $300 range. $300 for a gift for my daughter-in-law, who extends me no courtesy, whose interactions are minimal, who addresses me by my given name as though we were casual acquaintances, a pretense that is clearly unfounded. I will review my options. Excellent. And one further point, there will be approximately 20 guests in attendance. Jamal and I are naturally covering our portion of the expenses. However, it would be most appreciated if you, as the mother-in-law, would contribute as well. Perhaps the beverages or the dessert. What are your thoughts? Her phrasing was not a question of my capability, but a declarative statement suggesting an obligation. It implied a duty on my part to subsidize her birthday celebration for 20 guests whose identities were unknown to me. Shanice, I am uncertain of my capacity to cover additional expenditures. This past month has presented considerable financial challenges. Oh, Ilara, it is my birthday. This is a milestone occasion, my 30th year. Might you truly endeavor to accommodate this request? Her tone was one I had come to recognize, a blend of complaint and subtle pressure, the very cadence she employed to cast me as the antagonist. I shall explore what is feasible. I knew you would. You are the most wonderful mother-in-law imaginable. She terminated the call before I could articulate a response. I remained, phone in hand, feeling a nascent surge of indignation, a silent, contained, yet palpable anger. The days leading up to Shanice's anniversary were a blur. I understood the necessity of a gift. I anticipated contributing financially to the evening's expenses, and I knew, despite these efforts, I would remain largely unacknowledged by them. I proceeded to the department store Shanice had specified. My presence, marked by my dated handbag and worn footwear, felt conspicuously out of place amidst the elegantly attired clientele engaged in high-value purchases. I accessed Shanice's wish list via a digital kiosk. The displayed prices induced a sensation of disorientation, as if the ground beneath me had shifted. The least expensive item amounted to $180. It was a set of towels. Towels. The items she had marked as particular favorites ranged from $300 upwards, encompassing a designer handbag, an artisanal French aroma diffuser, and a selection of Italian footwear. I stood before the screen for 10 minutes, resisting the urge to weep, determined not to succumb to tears in such a public setting. Ultimately, I selected the towel set, a purchase that consumed nearly all my remaining funds for the month. The cashier meticulously wrapped it in ornate paper, adorned with a gold ribbon. The presentation imparted an illusion of affluence, suggesting a capacity for such luxuries. It is a distinguished present for my daughter-in-law. It is her birthday. How thoughtful. I am confident she will value it immensely. I offered a smile in lieu of a verbal reply, acutely aware she would not. I foresaw Shanice's cursory examination, her perfunctory acknowledgement, a brief utterance such as, "Oh, these are lovely. Thank you," followed by immediate disinterest and a swift transition to the next topic. On the occasion of her birthday, I dressed in my finest attire, selecting my least antiquated dress, reserved for significant events. I applied a modest amount of makeup and meticulously styled my hair, aiming for a presentable appearance, hoping Jamal would feel a sense of pride in his mother. I arrived at the Red Velvet Bistro precisely at 8 o'clock. The establishment was undeniably grand, featuring soaring ceilings, ornate crystal chandeliers, and pristine white tablecloths, a setting that evoked a sense of one's own modest circumstances simply by inhabiting the space. A hostess with a professionally practiced smile approached me. "Do you have a reservation? I am attending a function with Shanice, the birthday honoree. This way." please." She guided me towards the rear of the dining area where a lengthy table was already occupied by numerous individuals. Jamal was immediately recognizable. He was engaged in animated conversation with a group of men, a glass of wine in his hand, attired in a new shirt I had not previously observed. He appeared content and at ease. Shanice occupied the opposite end of the table, surrounded by elegantly dressed women adorned with expensive jewelry. She wore a form-fitting crimson dress, likely exceeding 2 months of my pension in cost. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled in gentle waves cascading over her shoulders. I positioned myself near the table, awaiting acknowledgement. Several moments, perhaps a minute, elapsed without anyone noticing my presence. Finally, Jamal's gaze drifted upwards. "Oh, mother, you've arrived. Please, take a seat wherever space permits." He made no move to rise, offer a greeting, or introduce me to his companions. He merely gestured vaguely towards the table and resumed his conversation. I located an unoccupied chair towards the far end of the table, distant from both Jamal and Shanice. I found myself seated between two young couples, engrossed in their own discussions and laughter, their mirth pertaining to subjects beyond my comprehension. A perfunctory hello was offered, accompanied by a fleeting glance, and their conversation continued. I remained seated, my gift resting on my lap, feeling utterly unobserved. A server approached, presenting a wine list. "Would you care for a beverage?" "Water would be satisfactory, thank you. Are you quite certain?" "We possess an exceptional selection of wines. Merely water, if you please." I had no intention of incurring expenses for alcoholic beverages, knowing I would likely be expected to contribute to the final bill. The dinner commenced. Appetizers, which had evidently been pre-selected, were presented. These included shrimp enrobed in bacon, mushroom bruschetta, and modest portions of smoked salmon. Each dish was visually appealing, yet my appetite was suppressed, my stomach in knots. Around me, a cacophony of laughter and conversation filled the air. Toasts were proposed, anecdotes shared. Surrounded by 20 individuals, I felt a profound sense of solitude, surpassing that of my empty home. At a certain juncture, Shanice rose and requested the assembly's attention. "I wish to express my gratitude to everyone for joining me in this celebration. This past year has been extraordinary. I am blessed with a remarkable husband, wonderful friends, and a life I would not exchange for any other. Let us raise our glasses to life, to love, and to many more years of happiness." All raised their glasses in assent. I lifted my glass of water. No one took notice. Jamal also rose. "To my exquisite wife, the most remarkable woman on this earth, I love you." They shared a kiss. The gathering erupted in applause. I too applauded, my hands feeling inexplicably heavy. The main courses were served. I had opted for the least expensive item on the menu, a chicken preparation, which still amounted to $35. The others selected cuts of steak priced at $60 or $70, lobster, scallops, dishes with French appellations I could not even pronounce. I ate deliberately, attempting to prolong the consumption of my meal, seeking an activity for my hands while the others engaged in their discussions. The woman seated adjacent to me recounted details of an impending European excursion to her husband. The gentleman on my other side discussed stock market investments. I possessed no relevant input for these conversations, no common ground with these individuals. My life did not involve travel. I did not engage in investments. My pension barely sustained me from month to month. Following the main course, dessert was presented, a towering arrangement of pastries accompanied by a chocolate sauce intended for sharing. Subsequently, the cake arrived, a magnificent three-tiered creation adorned with edible golden floral embellishments. The cake alone represented a cost exceeding $200. We sang, "Happy Birthday." Shanice extinguished the candles. Further applause, more toasts. Then came the distribution of gifts. One by one, the guests presented Shanice with elegantly wrapped packages. She unwrapped them with evident delight, showcasing each acquisition. French perfume, a designer wallet, gold earrings, a spa voucher. Each gift surpassed the previous in value. When my turn arrived, I extended my gift box with the gold ribbon. "Happy birthday, Shanice. Thank you." Shanice quickly opened the present. Her gaze fell upon the towels. She did not even fully extract them from the packaging. "Oh, these are lovely. Thank you." And she placed the box aside, proceeding to the next gift. $180 dismissed in mere seconds. A sensation of heat rose in my throat. It was not tears, but a profound fury, a wrath that had been accumulating for months, now poised to erupt. Once all gifts had been opened, the waiter delivered the bill. It was placed in the center of the table. For a moment, no one reached for it. The conversations continued unabated. Final sips of beverages were taken, coffee cups emptied. Jamal then retrieved it. I observed a slight widening of his eyes as he perused the total. He turned to address Shanice in a hushed tone. She nodded. He then directed his gaze towards my position. "Mother, might you join me here for a moment?" I rose, my legs exhibiting a slight tremor, and approached them. "Look. The final tabulation exceeded our initial estimations. It amounts to approximately $450 in total. We intend to contribute $300. Would it be possible for you to cover the remainder as your contribution towards Shanice's birthday celebration?" $150, nearly a month's worth of my sustenance, more than double my utility expenses, half of my monthly pension. "Jamal, I do not have such a sum readily available. Do you possess a credit card?" "Yes, but..." "Excellent. Utilize the card. We shall reconcile the accounts at a later juncture." That phrase implied an indefinite deferral, an unstated refusal to repay. For the first time throughout the evening, Shanice met my gaze directly. There was a frigid, calculating quality in her eyes. "Ara, it is my birthday. Are you truly intending to spoil my evening over a financial matter?" The surrounding guests were beginning to perceive the unfolding situation. Their conversations waned, and their attention shifted towards us. "I am not endeavoring to spoil anything. It is simply that the sum is substantial, and Mother, please, refrain from creating a spectacle." Jamal's voice was tinged with tension and embarrassment, as though I were the one transgressing. I observed my son, noting the admixture of pleading and vexation in his eyes. I saw Shanice, resplendent in her expensive crimson attire, her makeup impeccably applied, awaiting my resolution of their predicament. I observed the assembled company, their gazes fixed upon us, their silent judgment, and something within me finally yielded. "I am going to the restroom." I retrieved my purse and proceeded towards the restrooms with determined steps. I heard Jamal's voice behind me. "Mother, wait." However, I did not falter. I reached the corridor leading to the restrooms. An emergency exit was situated nearby, and adjacent to it, a door opened onto the parking lot. Without hesitation, I pushed the door and stepped out into the cool night air. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my mobile device. I initiated a call for a taxi service. The operator informed me of an estimated arrival time of 5 minutes. 5 minutes that felt interminable. I stood concealed in the dim light of the parking lot, partially obscured by a vehicle awaiting its arrival. My heart pounded with such intensity that it reverberated in my ears. With each passing second, I anticipated hearing Jamal's voice calling for me. I expected him to emerge in search of me, yet no one appeared. The taxi arrived. I entered swiftly, providing my address. As we departed from the vicinity of the restaurant, I cast a final glance through the window. The illumination emanating from the red velvet bistro glowed in the distance. Within, the festivities continued, dining, laughter, revelry, while I had just absconded, leaving behind an outstanding bill of $450. For the first time in years, a sense of guilt did not possess me. Instead, I experienced a sentiment akin to liberation. Upon reaching my residence, I paid the taxi fare with the remaining currency in my wallet. I entered and secured the door. All lights were extinguished. The house was both cold and silent. However, instead of retreating to my room to weep, as I had done on countless prior occasions, I proceeded directly to my closet. I retrieved the 3 suitcases I had stored, placed them upon my bed, and commenced packing. This was not a decision driven by emotion, but rather a logical, dispassionate, calculated undertaking. My actions were fully deliberate. As I folded my garments and placed them into the suitcases, my phone began to ring. It was Jamal. I did not answer. He called again. I did not respond. Then, text messages began to arrive. "Mother, where are you? Why did you depart so abruptly? This is profoundly embarrassing. Everyone is inquiring about your whereabouts. You must return immediately." I silenced the device and continued my packing. I gathered my essential documents, my passport, my financial statements, and the property deeds. These I placed in a manila folder, which I set upon the coffee table in the living room. Subsequently, I proceeded to my small safe, concealed at the rear of the closet. Within it resided funds I had been discreetly accumulating over the past year. The sum was modest, accumulated incrementally. $20 here, $30 there, by foregoing personal comforts. To secure a measure of financial stability, these funds represented my means of escape, and tonight they would finally serve that purpose. I counted the bills, placed them in my wallet, and closed the safe. I noted the time, 10:30 in the evening. I estimated that Jamal and Shanice would remain at the restaurant for at least an additional 2 hours. Initially, they would need to resolve the issue of the bill. This would likely involve contacting friends, potentially seeking credit card advances, or perhaps even resorting to washing dishes. The very notion brought a smile to my face, the first in months. Subsequently, they would embark on a search for me, their demeanor agitated, mortified, prepared to confront me with recriminations, to instill guilt, and to demand my intervention to rectify the situation. However, this time, I would be prepared. I completed my packing. 3 suitcases containing the necessities, clothing, footwear, a few cherished photographs from Jamal's childhood, a period when he still genuinely loved me, my medications, and my documents. I changed from my celebratory attire into something more comfortable: cotton trousers, a simple blouse, and flat shoes. I removed my makeup and let down my hair. Then, I settled into my favorite armchair, the suitcases positioned beside me and the folder of documents resting on the table. I extinguished all lights except for a small lamp in the corner and awaited their arrival. The phone continued to ring. More calls, more text messages. Now, Shanice was also sending messages. Ara, this is unforgivable. You have disgraced us in front of everyone. How could you do this to us? I read each message with an unusual sense of composure. They no longer held any sway over me, as if they were directed at someone else entirely. The former me, who permitted herself to be manipulated. But that version of myself no longer existed. At 12:30, I heard a vehicle park in front of my residence. Hastily, angry footsteps. The distinct sound of a key in the lock. Jamal retained a duplicate set of my keys. The door was flung open, violently. "Mother, where are you?" Jamal's voice was laced with agitation and anger. Shanice entered behind him. I could discern the distinct click of her heels on the hardwood floor. They did not immediately illuminate the interior, their movements indicative of searching for me in the darkness. I heard Jamal approach my bedroom. "Mother, respond to me." Then his footsteps returned to the living room. His hand located the main light switch. He flipped it, and they beheld me seated calmly in my armchair, my suitcases at the ready, my documents laid out, regarding them with a serenity they had never witnessed. Jamal froze, his mouth agape, yet no sound emerged for several seconds. Then he emitted a cry. Initially, it was not articulate words, but a profound lament of sheer desperation, as if he had encountered a spectral apparition. What? What is the meaning of this?" His voice trembled. He surveyed the suitcases, the documents, my placid countenance. Shanice stepped forward. Her makeup was smeared, mascara staining the area beneath her eyes. Her crimson dress appeared creased, her former elegance entirely dissipated. "Do you comprehend the mortification you have inflicted upon us? Do you have any inkling of what we endured to settle that bill?" I met her gaze without uttering a word, simply staring. We were compelled to borrow from my acquaintances. We presented ourselves as destitute before everyone, all due to your actions. Your decision to indulge in a temper tantrum and flee like a petulant child. Jamal took a step towards me. "Mother, this is excessive. I acknowledge that we occasionally request assistance, and I concede that we do not always repay promptly. But that does not grant you license to abandon us in such a manner, to embarrass us. What has become of you? And what is all of this?" He gestured towards the suitcases. At last, I opened my mouth. My voice emerged with a calm, cold, and firm tone. "I am departing. Departing? To where precisely? To a distant locale, to commence anew, to live the remainder of my existence with dignity." Jamal emitted a nervous, disbelieving laugh. "Dignity? Mother, do not be absurd. You have no alternative destination. You possess no financial resources. What course of action do you propose? To reside on the streets? I possess funds. I have accumulated savings of which you are unaware. And I have plans. Plans? But you are incapable of independent action. You have invariably relied upon us." That assertion struck me with the force of a physical blow. You have invariably relied upon us, when the reality was precisely the inverse. They were the ones dependent upon me, my finances, my availability, my inability to refuse their requests. I have never been dependent on you, Jamal. You have been dependent on me, on my pension, my savings, my property, my time. For 2 years, I have served as your personal financier and your unpaid domestic assistant. And on no occasion, not even once, have you demonstrated genuine appreciation. Shanice scoffed. Oh, please. We sought assistance, as any normal family would. It is not such a significant matter. It is not such a significant matter. Over $10,000 in 2 years, Shanice. $10,000 that you never repaid, derived from my $800 monthly pension, while you two indulged in Caribbean vacations, acquired opulent garments, and occupied lavish residences. Jamal ran his hands through his hair. He was beginning to grasp that this particular exchange would not conclude in the manner of previous instances, that he would be unable to manipulate me through guilt. Mother, had you required reimbursement, you merely needed to inform us. There was no necessity for such an elaborate display. I have conveyed this to you on numerous occasions, and you have consistently rendered me the villain, the selfish maternal figure who levies charges against her own son. Because that is precisely how you appear at this moment. As a vindictive individual meticulously itemizing every perceived transgression. I am not tallying financial transactions, Jamal. I'm documenting every instance of disrespect, every humiliation, every time you sought my presence solely out of convenience. I'm noting each forgotten call, each canceled rendezvous, each moment you rendered me invisible. The ensuing silence was thick, palpable. Shanice was the first to break it. This is preposterous. Ara is being overly dramatic. Families are meant to support one another. Families extend respect, Shanice. They show consideration. They hold each other in high regard. And the two of you show me no respect. You have no consideration for me. You place no value on me. You simply exploit me. Jamal, shaking his head, countered, "This is your own doing. You indulged us. You consistently agreed to everything. You failed to establish boundaries, and now you lament our taking advantage. But you cultivated that very behavior in us." His words struck a chord because he was accurate. I had indeed indulged them. I had permitted this, but that did not excuse their harshness. You are correct. I enabled this, and now I will put an end to it. Jamal moved closer. A shift in his gaze was evident. The anger had been replaced by something akin to fear. "Mother, please stop. Cease this nonsense. You are not going anywhere. I am indeed leaving." "Tomorrow morning? And this home? Are you simply going to abandon it?" I retrieved the document portfolio from the table, opened it deliberately, withdrew some papers, and presented them to him. "This residence is no longer mine." Jamal accepted the documents with hands that trembled. His eyes rapidly scanned the contents. I witnessed his complexion transform, draining from the flush of anger to the pallor of shock. "You sold the house. I sold it 3 weeks ago for $350,000. Shanice's voice cracked as she spoke. "But this house belonged to Jamal. It was his inheritance. This house was mine, Shanice. It was registered in my name. I purchased this home with my late husband's life insurance payout when he passed away. Jamal was 10 years old. For 38 years, this house provided shelter for me, and the decision of what to do with it was mine. And you opted to sell it to a stranger without even consulting us." Jamal let the papers fall onto the table. He sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. "I find this unbelievable. I cannot comprehend that you would do this." I settled all my outstanding debts, including the medical bills I had been carrying. I resolved my financial situation with the bank. I set aside a portion for my living expenses and donated the remainder. You donated it? You donated the funds that rightfully belonged to your son? I contributed $50,000 to a sanctuary for elderly women who are survivors of domestic abuse. Because that is precisely what I am, Jamal, a victim of abuse. Not through physical assault, not through verbal onslaughts, but through manipulation, exploitation, and emotional abandonment, masked as filial affection. Shanice emitted a laugh, a sound of hysteria and disbelief. Abuse? Are you comprehending your own words? We request your assistance on occasion, and now we are considered abusers. You are clearly delusional. I rose from the armchair. My legs no longer felt unsteady. I felt resolute, self-assured. Shanice, since your marriage to my son 3 years ago, you have treated me as if I were an employee. You have never addressed me as mom, always adopting a tone of casual familiarity, yet never extending the courtesy expected in a friendship. You issue commands. You make demands. You contact me only when you require something. And when I am unable to fulfill your desires, you imbue me with a sense of personal failing. That is untrue. No. When was the last time you inquired about my well-being? When was the last occasion you invited me to an event without the expectation that I would bear the expense? When was the last time you made me feel that I held significance in someone's life? The silence reasserted itself, but this time it was different. It was an uncomfortable, guilt-ridden quiet. Jamal finally lifted his head. Mother, if you felt this way, you should have discussed it with us, not undertaken all of this covertly. I attempted to communicate on numerous occasions, but each time I mentioned the need for the money to be returned, you made me feel avaricious. Whenever I stated that I could not provide assistance, you manipulated me with guilt. You prevented me from speaking, Jamal. You silenced me repeatedly. Shanice folded her arms. Well, what now? Do you anticipate us pleading with you to stay, to beg for your absolution? I anticipate nothing. I no longer harbor any expectations of you. Tonight, I came to bid farewell, to conclude this chapter, and to request the return of my house keys. Jamal produced the keyring from his pocket. He gazed at the keys as if they were precious artifacts. Then, with a surge of anger, he tossed them onto the table. Take your blasted keys. I retrieved them and placed them in my handbag. The new proprietors will take possession of the house on November the 1st. You have a fortnight to remove any possessions you may have left here. Following that period, it will no longer be my concern. Where are you going to go? That is no longer your problem. Shanice took a step toward me. Her stance conveyed a sense of menace. You realize this is a mistake, correct? You will find yourself entirely solitary, estranged from your family, with no one to provide care for you during periods of illness or when you are no longer capable of self-sufficiency. And then, what course of action will you pursue? I met her gaze directly. I would rather experience solitude and tranquility than endure companionship coupled with misery. And should the day arrive when I am unable to care for myself, there exist institutions, places where seniors receive dignified care without having to compromise their self-respect. Establishments where one is not made to feel like a burden. Jamal sprang from the sofa. You are selfish, a self-centered individual who solely prioritizes personal needs. We dedicated years of our existence to you. We included you in our celebrations. We fostered a sense of belonging within the family, and this is your reciprocation. You made me feel like a part of the family, Jamal. Tonight, I sat at that table, surrounded by 20 individuals, and felt more isolated than ever. No one engaged me in conversation. No one inquired about my affairs. I was merely the financial resource expected to materialize at the conclusion to settle the account. That is not familial devotion. That is exploitation. Enough. I have no desire to hear any further expressions of your perceived victimhood. Jamal's voice was glacial. All vestiges of entreaty had vanished. Only disdain remained. Then, depart. Vacate my residence. You have a fortnight to collect your belongings. Thereafter, I wish to have no further contact with you. You wish to cease contact with us. Just like that? After all that we have done for you? Precisely what have you accomplished for me, Shanice? Name one singular act, one genuine act you have performed for me over the past 2 years. She was at a loss for a response. She stood there, searching for words, but found none. Jamal took Shanice by the arm. Let's depart. There is no point in conversing with her. She is irrational. They moved towards the door, but before exiting, Jamal turned back one final time. You will come to regret this, Mother. You will miss us. You will find yourselves in need of us, and when that time arrives, we will not be present. I am aware, and that is acceptable. The door slammed shut with a resonant thud that vibrated through the walls. I heard the engine of the car ignite, the tires squeal on the asphalt, and then silence descended. I stood in the center of my living room, drawing deep breaths. My heart pounded, not from apprehension, but from pure adrenaline. For the first time in years, I had asserted my dignity. I had refused. I had established boundaries. I reseated myself in my armchair. My gaze fell upon the luggage. My eyes then focused on the documents. Everything was prepared. I scarcely slept that night. Not from unease or remorse, but from exhilaration, from the peculiar and wondrous sensation of having reclaimed dominion over my own existence. At 6 a.m, I arose, indulged in an extended shower, donned comfortable attire, gathered my suitcases, and summoned a taxi. Prior to my departure, I traversed the house one last time. My hand glided over the walls. I recalled the joyful years when my husband was alive, when Jamal was a sweet little boy who embraced me and declared me the finest mother in the world, when this dwelling echoed with laughter and genuine affection. However, those times had long since passed, and clinging to their memory served only to inflict pain. The taxi's horn sounded outside. I collected my luggage, closed the door, and deposited the keys in the mailbox for the real estate agent who would arrive later. I entered the taxi. To where, madam? To the bus terminal. During the journey, my phone rang. It was Jamal. I did not answer. He called again. He sent text messages. Mother, we need to speak. Please respond. Do not do this. I deactivated the phone. At the terminal, I purchased a ticket. A 6-hour transit northward towards the coastal settlement where I was born, where my cousin Aisha Monroe, the sole relative who had maintained contact with me throughout these years without seeking anything in return, still resided. I had written to her the preceding week, conveyed my entire situation, and she, without hesitation, had assured me that I was welcome to stay with her for as long as necessary, that she had a spare room, and that it would be an honor to have me near. I boarded the bus, located my seat by the window, stowed my baggage, and settled in. The bus began to move. I watched the city recede through the window, the streets I had navigated for years, the edifices I knew, the life I had constructed and was now forsaking. And for the first time in a considerable duration, I experienced not sadness, but relief. The bus journey was protracted yet peaceful. I spent the initial hours gazing out the window, observing the urban panorama gradually yielding to open countryside, then mountains, and finally the coastal highway. The ocean appeared on the horizon like a luminous band, evoking memories of my childhood. The summers spent frolicking on the beach, the unburdened days when happiness was readily attainable. Beside me traveled a young woman with an infant. The child occasionally whimpered, and she cradled him with boundless patience. At one point, she offered an apologetic glance. "I apologize if he is causing you disturbance. He is somewhat restless from the journey. He is not disturbing me in the least. Your baby is exquisite." She offered a genuine, warm smile. "Visiting family?" "Yes, my cousin. We have not seen each other in person for many years." "That is delightful. Family holds paramount importance, does it not?" I inclined my head in agreement without further remark, as I was no longer certain I subscribed to that sentiment. Family is of utmost importance. But what transpires when family inflicts pain, when family exploits you? Does it retain its preeminent status, or does it transform into an anchor dragging you downward? We arrived at the coastal terminal. As the sun began its descent, the atmosphere here carried a different aroma, of salt, of the sea, of liberation. Aisha awaited me at the entrance. Upon beholding her, something within me fractured. I had not seen my cousin for nearly 5 years. She lived her life here. I lived mine there. We exchanged correspondence periodically, but there was always an impediment to visits. Or rather, there was perpetually someone. Jamal, his exigencies, his crises, his manner of consuming all my time and resources. Ara. Aisha extended her arms, and I yielded to her embrace. For the first time in a considerable period, someone held me without expectation of reciprocation, simply because they loved me, simply because we cherished one another. I wept in her arms. I wept out all that I had suppressed for months. She offered no words. She simply held me until my tears had ceased. "Let us go home. You must be utterly fatigued." Her dwelling was modest yet comfortable. It was situated 3 blocks from the shoreline, in a tranquil enclave where neighbors exchanged greetings and children played in the street without apprehension. She guided me to the room designated for my occupancy. It contained a bed adorned with freshly laundered linens, a window offering a view of the backyard, and an antique yet functional dresser. It is not opulent, but it is yours. For as long as you require it, it is perfect. And it was. It was unpretentious, sincere, authentic. There were no affectations, no underlying expectations. That evening we shared a meal in her compact kitchen. Homemade vegetable soup accompanied by freshly baked bread. Simple fare that evoked a sense of home. Would you care to recount the entire narrative? I divulged every particular, every indignity, every loan that remained unrepaid, every unanswered telephone call, every instance where I felt overlooked. I recounted Shanice's birthday celebration, my decision to forgo the restaurant engagement, and the altercation at my residence at 2 a.m. Aisha listened attentively, without interruption. Upon my concluding remarks, she clasped my hand across the table. "You acted judiciously. You truly believe so?" At times, I feel my actions were excessively severe, that I ought to have attempted further dialogue with them. Ara, listen to me with absolute attention. You made numerous attempts at communication, but they were unwilling to engage. They desired a benefactor, not a maternal figure. And you merit treatment characterized by respect and affection, not as a resource to be depleted until its exhaustion. Her words provided a solace I had not experienced in years. And what if I experience regret? What if, in a few months, I long for Jamal and wish to return? Then you will return. However, it will be a decision born of empowerment, not desperation. For the present, you require recuperation. You must rediscover your identity independent of being Jamal's mother. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. No restlessness, no anxiety, no anticipation of the phone ringing with another request, another crisis, another method to make me feel both essential and disposable. The initial days at Aisha's residence were dedicated to adaptation. It proved challenging to acclimate to the absence of responsibilities, to cease expecting a call, to shed the pervasive tension in my chest. Aisha was employed part-time at a local bookstore. She invited me to accompany her one day. The bookstore was an enchanting establishment, replete with both vintage and contemporary volumes, featuring a small coffee counter in a corner where patrons congregated to read and converse. The proprietor was a woman of my age named Yetta Thompson. Her hair was entirely white, gathered in a disheveled knot, and she wore reading glasses suspended from a chain around her neck. So, you are the renowned cousin Elara. Aisha has spoken of you. I trust it was in favorable terms, only the truth, that you are courageous, that you made a difficult resolution, and that you are embarking on a new beginning. I do not perceive myself as particularly brave. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the act of undertaking what is necessary despite its presence. She offered me a cup of coffee. We settled at a small table adjacent to the window. Ite shared her personal history. She too had been married. She had raised 2 daughters. She devoted 30 years of her life to their care, working to sustain them and sacrificing her aspirations for theirs. And when her husband passed away and her daughters had grown, they estranged themselves from her. They relocated to other cities. They contacted her once a month, at best. They visited on Christmas, provided no other commitments conflicted. And how did you surmount this? I did not surmount it. I accepted it. I accepted that I had offered all that I was capable of giving, that I had fulfilled all my perceived obligations, and that their lack of appreciation reflected nothing upon me. It reflected everything upon them. Subsequently, I established this bookstore. I discovered a new sense of belonging amongst the literature, with the patrons who evolved into confidants, and within this small community that welcomed me. I do not constantly yearn for them, but I no longer require their presence, and that constitutes the fundamental difference. Her pronouncements resonated with me for days. I commenced assisting at the bookstore. Initially, my tasks were limited to arranging books and cleaning shelves. Subsequently, I learned to operate the cash register, prepare coffee, and recommend literary works to customers based on their preferences. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of purpose that did not inflict pain. I felt esteemed, yet it provided me with a modest stipend. It was not substantial, merely $600 monthly, but it was my own. Earned through my own efforts, free from guilt, devoid of emotional obligation. 3 weeks elapsed. Jamal had not contacted me again after the initial few days. I kept my phone mostly deactivated. I would activate it for an hour each evening to check for any urgent communications. One night, upon powering it on, I discovered 17 new messages, all originating from Jamal. My heart began to accelerate. I opened them with trembling fingers. The initial messages were laced with fury. "You are selfish. I hope you are content with the destruction of your own family." "Shanice is correct. You are a bitter, resentful individual." Then their tone shifted. "Mother, I need to speak with you. Please call me. It is imperative. Mother, we are encountering difficulties." And finally, the last text message. "The bank is levying exorbitant interest rates on the loan we were compelled to secure to cover the cost of the dinner. We are delinquent in our payments for the new apartment. If we do not receive funds shortly, we will forfeit the deposit. We require your assistance." I read the message 3 times. A complex blend of emotions washed over me. A portion of me, that deeply ingrained maternal instinct, honed over decades of self-sacrifice, yearned to call him, to offer aid, to resolve his predicaments. However, another part of me, a newer, more robust sensibility, recognized the underlying truth. They did not miss my presence, they craved my financial resources. And should I provide even a single cent, the cycle would recommence. The pattern of exploitation, the dynamic of emotional manipulation disguised as familial devotion. I deleted the messages. I powered off the phone once more. Aisha observed me from the kitchen. "Are you quite well?" "Yes, I am." And it was the truth. For the first time in a considerable period, I was genuinely well. Days transitioned into weeks. October concluded. November arrived, bringing a crispness to the air and the scent of fallen leaves. The residence that had once been mine now had new occupants. Jamal and Shanice must have relocated their belongings. That segment of my existence was definitively concluded. At the bookstore, I began to cultivate acquaintances. A book club convened every Thursday afternoon. Women of my age, some younger, some older, all possessing their own unique narratives, all bearing their own scars, all seeking connection and mutual understanding. One of them, Julianne, invited me for a morning stroll along the beach. She was 70 years of age, widowed, and had resided independently for a decade. Do you comprehend the secret to contentment at our stage of life? No, I do not. Pray tell. It lies in ceasing to anticipate that others will fill our internal voids, in learning to achieve wholeness within ourselves, and in cultivating a chosen family, rather than clinging to the biological relations that cause us pain. Chosen family, precisely. The individuals we opt to integrate into our lives because they uplift us. They hold us in regard. They recognize our worth. Not because we share a common lineage, but because we share genuine affection. We walked in contemplative silence for a period, listening to the rhythmic crashing of waves upon the shore. The sun cast a golden sheen upon the water. Children were constructing sandcastles. Couples ambled hand in hand. Life, a simple, beautiful existence that required no grand gestures or financial wealth to possess meaning. Do you believe I will ever attain the capacity to forgive my son? I cannot say. However, what I do know with certainty is that forgiveness does not equate to forgetting. It does not imply permitting him to inflict further harm. You can extend forgiveness while maintaining a judicious distance. You can wish him well while simultaneously safeguarding yourself from his toxicity. December commenced with a gentle coolness, barely perceptible in the coastal climate. The bookstore was adorned with festive Christmas lights, and Iet orchestrated a special year-end event, an open poetry recitation where anyone could share their creative expressions. I elected to participate. I read a poem I had composed during my sleepless nights, a poem that spoke of regeneration, of the liberation of embracing freedom. Upon concluding, the small assembly offered applause. Aisha's eyes glistened with moisture. Julianne embraced me tightly. "You possess greater resilience than you realize." Her words remained with me for days. Christmas was drawing near. It would be the first I would observe without Jamal since his birth. 35 years of Christmases shared, 35 years of cherished traditions, and now nothing. I anticipated experiencing melancholy. I anticipated the oppressive weight of solitude crushing me during the festive season. However, such an occurrence did not materialize. Aisha, Iete, Julianne, and other women from the book club organized a communal Christmas dinner. Each individual contributed a dish. I prepared my distinctive chicken soup, the very one Jamal used to adore during his childhood. But this time, I prepared it for myself, for my newly formed chosen family. That evening, seated at the table, surrounded by women who valued me, who listened intently, who exhibited genuine interest in my well-being, I experienced a profound realization. This was the family I had always merited. Not perfect, not bound by blood, but authentic, sincere, and imbued with mutual esteem. Following the repast, once all had departed, I assisted Aisha with the dishwashing. Do you experience longing for your former life? Not to the extent I had anticipated. I miss the Jamal who once was, the boy who was tender and affectionate. But that particular Jamal no longer exists. The man he has become is not conducive to my well-being. It is a sorrowful realization when one's children mature and evolve into strangers. This newfound freedom is incredibly liberating because you finally grasp that it's not your burden to bear their choices, their errors, their very existence. Precisely. That evening, before drifting off to sleep, I retrieved my phone, dormant for weeks. Numerous new messages awaited, all from Jamal. The initial ones dated back to mid-December. "Mama, I understand you're upset, but it's been a significant amount of time. Don't you think it's time for us to reconnect? Shanice believes you're being childish. I suspect you're simply in pain. We can mend this. We'd be delighted if you'd join us for Christmas. We can make a fresh start." Then came the more recent messages, sent just 2 days ago. "Mama, circumstances are exceedingly difficult. We've lost our apartment. We were unable to meet the payment. We've had to relocate back with Shanice's parents. It's mortifying. Shanice's parents are charging us rent. Can you fathom that? They expect their own daughter to pay to reside in their home. I desperately need you to loan me some funds to extricate myself from this predicament. I solemnly promise I will repay you this time." The final message arrived this morning. I know your current location. Aisha shared a photograph on social media and I caught a glimpse of you in the background. You're in the town where she resides. I'm en route there now. We need to have a face-to-face conversation. My heart began to pound. He was coming here. Jamal was on his way to find me. I contacted Aisha without delay. She entered my room, clad in her sleepwear, her hair disheveled. "What has transpired?" "Jamal is aware of my whereabouts. He's stated he's coming here." Aisha settled onto my bed. "And what is your inclination?" "I'm unsure. A part of me yearns to encounter him. to hold on to the hope that perhaps he has transformed, that perhaps he is genuinely remorseful. And the other part comprehends that his sole motivation for coming is his need for me, because he faces challenges and presumes I can resolve them, as has always been the case. Then you already comprehend the appropriate course of action. But he is my son, Aisha. I acknowledge that, and he will forever remain your son. However, that does not obligate you to grant him entry every time he appears at your door. You can maintain affection for him from a distance. You can extend well wishes to him without compromising your own tranquility. I spent the night in wakefulness, contemplating, recalling, striving to fortune my heart for what lay ahead. Jamal arrived 2 days subsequently. It was December 27th, a somber day tinged with the scent of impending rain. I was at the bookstore when Aisha contacted me. "He's here at my residence, inquiring about you. How does he appear? Weary? Emaciated? He claims he requires an urgent discussion with you. I am en route." The walk from the bookstore to Aisha's dwelling felt like the longest of my existence. Each step bore down upon me. Each breath was arduous. Upon my arrival, Jamal was seated in the living area. He rose the instant he perceived me. Aisha had been accurate. He looked utterly depleted. He had lost weight. Dark circles were deeply etched beneath his eyes. His garments were creased. "Mama." His voice faltered as he uttered the word. "Jamal." We stood frozen, gazing at one another. Two strangers who had once shared an immeasurable connection. "May we converse in private?" I glanced at Aisha. She offered a slight nod. "I shall be in the kitchen should you require my presence." Jamal and I ventured out into the backyard. We settled into the plastic chairs beneath the lemon tree. "Mama, I am profoundly sorry for every transgression that has occurred. I apologize for exploiting you. I apologize for failing to appreciate you. You were entirely correct about every aspect. I was an abysmal son." The words seemed earnest, yet I had schooled myself to listen beyond mere utterances, to seek the genuine essence beneath the apologies. "Why have you come, Jamal?" "Because I miss your presence. Because I wish to salvage our relationship, and for no other reason." He fell silent, his eyes glistening with tears. "Because everything has disintegrated, Mama. We've lost the apartment. Shanice and I are in constant conflict. Her parents treat us as an encumbrance. I have no one else. You represent my sole remaining family." There it was, the unvarnished truth. He hadn't come out of a longing for me. He had come because he was in need of me. "Jamal, do you possess any recollection of the number of messages you dispatched to me during those 3 months?" "I do not." "Numerous, I surmise. 47 messages. Do you have any awareness of how many of those messages were solely for the purpose of inquiring about my well-being, devoid of any requests, devoid of any perceived need?" He grew silent. "None, Jamal. Not a single one. Every communication pertained to you, your predicaments, your necessities, your financial requirements. You never once inquired if I was content, if I found joy, if I required anything whatsoever. I apologize. Are you truly repentant, or are you merely regretful about the loss of your resource? Because my conviction is the latter." "It is not so, Mama. I cherish you. I have always cherished you. Affection is not merely a matter of vocalization, Jamal. It is expressed through actions. It is demonstrated through respect. It is characterized by reciprocity. For a duration of 2 years, I relinquished all that I possessed: funds, time, vitality, And in return, I received naught but escalating demands. I am aware, and I aspire to undergo a transformation. Grant me an opportunity to demonstrate this to you. By what means? By extending further financial assistance, by permitting you to continue to leverage me until I am utterly depleted. No. I have secured a new employment opportunity. With a superior remuneration, I shall be capable of reimbursing you for every cent I owe. Absolutely everything. Jamal, your indebtedness to me surpasses $10,000. I am aware of this sum. However, incrementally, I shall discharge this obligation. I pledge this. I no longer desire your financial contributions. What I seek is my inner peace. And you do not provide me with the tranquility. You engender anxiety within me. You inflict sorrow upon me. You cultivate within me the sensation that my worth is solely contingent upon what I can bestow upon you. That is not an accurate assertion. No. Then inform me, when was the final occasion you sought me out simply because you desired my companionship? When was the last time you extended an invitation to me for an outing and bore the expense yourself? When was the last instance you expressed concern for my health, my aspirations, my contentment? He was incapable of formulating a response. You cannot, can you? Because such an event has never transpired. I was perpetually the giver, and you were perpetually the recipient. Tears now coursed down his visage. So, what precisely do you wish me to undertake? To implore your pardon upon bended knee? To endure suffering? To languish? I desire none of those things. My sole wish is for you to liberate me into a state of peace, to permit me to experience felicity unburdened by guilt, to comprehend that I possess the inherent right to navigate my existence without being perpetually tethered to your incessant requisitions. But you are my mother, and I am your son. However, that designation does not confer ownership upon me. It does not establish me as your panacea for every ailment. You are an adult. The opportune moment has arrived for you to conduct yourself as one. He rose from the chair. He traversed a few paces. He ran his hands through his hair. As he turned, a discernible alteration was evident in his demeanor. The facade of vulnerability had dissolved. Now, only unadulterated ire remained. So, that is the summation of it. You have forsaken me precisely as you abandoned the dinner. Just as you relinquished the domicile, just as you deserted Shanice and me. I did not abandon you. You rendered me obsolete long prior to that juncture. I merely ceased to be readily available for exploitation. Do you comprehend? You are correct. I did not seek this encounter to rectify anything. I came because I required financial assistance, because I harbored the belief that I could still sway you. However, I perceive that you have transformed into someone selfish and embittered. His pronouncements no longer inflicted the sting they once did. It was as though I had cultivated an impervious barrier, an invisible bulwark forged from self-respect and profound clarity. If espousing self-care is synonymous with selfishness, then indeed I am selfish. If refraining from allowing myself to be exploited henceforth equates to bitterness, then undeniably I am bitter, and I find solace in that state. Jamal shook his head, incredulous. I cannot recognize you. You are not the mother I raised. Precisely. I am no longer the maternal figure you cultivated to serve your purposes. I am now the woman I ought to have perpetually been, a woman endowed with dignity, fortified by boundaries, enriched by self-love. He pivoted to depart, but before reaching the garden portal, he paused. And if I should ever require your assistance, If something gravely detrimental were to befall me, you would also be absent. The query struck me in the chest, for therein lay the eternal quandary of every maternal figure. Where does maternal affection cease its embrace? And at what juncture does self-inflicted ruin commence its insidious creep? If something were to truly transpire that gravely imperiled your existence or safety, I wish for you to be cognizant that you will perpetually be my son. However, your financial tribulations do not constitute life or death emergencies. They are the direct ramifications of your own decisions, and those are no longer within my purview of responsibility. We exchanged a final, lingering gaze. I perceived within his eyes the dawning comprehension that there existed no path for regression, that the maternal presence he once knew had irrevocably ceased to exist. Farewell, Mama. Farewell, Jamal. I observed his receding form, his silhouette diminishing until it vanished entirely from view. And then I surrendered to the lament I had been suppressing. I wept for the son I had lost, for the bond that had never materialized into my cherished ideal. For the years I had offered freely, receiving nothing in return. I wept for the totality of it all. Aisha emerged into the garden and embraced me without uttering a single word. She simply held me as I expunged the accumulated anguish from my core. You acted with rectitude. It does not feel that way presently, as it is a source of pain. Love invariably inflicts pain when the necessity arises to relinquish it. However, the discomfort of releasing is considerably less than the torment of clinging to that which engenders your destruction. Days elapsed, followed by weeks. January ushered in the advent of a new year, replete with boundless possibilities. Jamal did not seek me out again. He neither telephoned nor dispatched any correspondence. And though a fragment of me still harbored a flicker of hope for some form of communication, a more substantial portion had learned to coexist with his absence. In February, Yvette extended to me an offer of full-time employment at the bookstore. I embraced it without hesitation. With my monthly stipend of $600, augmented by my pension, I could sustain myself comfortably. It was not a life of opulent indulgence, but rather a life of inherent dignity, a life that was unequivocally mine. I relocated to a modest dwelling situated 2 blocks from the shoreline, a diminutive space, yet perfectly adequate, featuring a kitchen where I prepared my repasts, a living area where I engaged in reading during the evenings, and a bed upon which I slept profoundly, free from the grip of anxiety. The book club evolved into my most cherished ritual. Every Thursday, we convened to dissect literary works, yet our discussions invariably meandered towards life's narratives, our personal journeys, and the scars we bore. Each of us possessed remarkably similar accounts. Children exhibiting ingratitude, familial relationships that had been exploitative, connections that had utterly depleted our reserves. However, we were also imbued with an enduring sense of hope. We were afforded a second opportunity to construct a life that nurtured us rather than diminished us. In March, Julianne orchestrated an excursion to the adjacent mountainous terrain, a weekend retreat designed for our cohort. We comprised 8 women, all exceeding the age of 60, each bearing a tapestry of survival stories. During that weekend, gathered around a crackling bonfire beneath the celestial expanse, we divulged our most profound truths, our regrets, our aspirations, our deepest apprehensions. When it was my turn to articulate my thoughts, I expressed a sentiment that had long resided within my heart. For 35 years, I harbored the pervasive feeling of inadequacy, the conviction that if I offered more, if I endured greater sacrifices, if I extended more profound affection, my son would finally perceive me, value me, and reciprocate my love. However, the unvarnished truth is that I was never the one who fell short. He was the individual who lacked the willingness to acknowledge my presence. All the women present offered affirmative nods. Some wept, for each of us had navigated some iteration of that very narrative. Yet I spoke next. The most formidable lesson I have had to assimilate is the realization that one cannot compel another to recognize one's value, not even one's own offspring. All that one can accomplish is to accord oneself the highest esteem and to disengage from those who fail to do likewise. That night I slumbered beneath the open sky, enveloped by a warm blanket, surrounded by kindred spirits who truly understood me. And for the inaugural time in my adult existence, I experienced an unadulterated sense of liberation. April arrived, heralded by the vibrant hues of wildflowers and the extended luminescence of the days. One afternoon, whilst meticulously organizing volumes within the confines of the bookstore, the chime above the entryway signaled an arrival. I lifted my gaze and became momentarily immobilized. It was Jamal, yet he had not arrived unaccompanied. He was gently guiding the hand of a diminutive girl, perhaps 3 years of age, her hair characterized by soft curls, her eyes mirroring those of my late husband. Mama. His voice resonated with a novel timbre, softer, more humble. Jamal. We remained stationary, a chasm of mere meters separating us. Yet it felt akin to an unfathomable expanse. "This is Zoe, your granddaughter." My heart momentarily ceased its rhythm. Granddaughter. Since when? Shanice was with a child when all these events unfolded. We had elected not to inform you. The reasoning? Well, it stemmed from the assumption that you would eventually return, that this entire episode was merely a temporary fit of pique. Zoe was brought into existence in January. I directed my gaze towards the child. She observed me with an air of unfeigned curiosity, seeking refuge behind her father's leg. "Hello, Zoe." She concealed her face against Jamal's limb. "We have not arrived with any ulterior motives or requests. My sole intention was for you to have the opportunity to meet her. I believed you possessed the inherent right to know that you are a grandmother." Yete emerged from the rear room, her perceptiveness instantly assessing the unfolding situation. "Ara, would you perhaps care for a brief respite?" "Yes, that would be most welcome." We adjourned to the small courtyard situated behind the bookstore. Jamal gently lifted Zoe and seated her upon a bench. She occupied herself with a fabric doll. "How is Shanice faring?" "She is quite well. We are managing. We have relocated to a more compact yet manageable apartment. I am currently engaged in 2 employment roles. She has resumed her work from home. It presents challenges, but we are successfully navigating the circumstances." "I am pleased to hear that." "Mama, I did not come seeking financial aid. My purpose in visiting was to convey that you were unequivocally correct in all respects. I was an exceptionally poor son. I exploited your generosity. I treated you with profound disrespect. I failed to acknowledge your inherent value. And when you finally departed, when I was ultimately deprived of your safety net, I was compelled to confront my own shortcomings, my own lack of accountability. Jamal, I implore you, allow me to complete my statement. When Zoe was born, at the very moment I cradled her in my arms for the initial instance, a profound realization dawned upon me. I comprehended the essence of unconditional love. I grasped the depth of your feelings for me, and I acknowledged that I had perpetrated an egregious abuse of that profound affection. Tears streamed down his countenance. I harbor no expectation of receiving your forgiveness. I do not anticipate a return to our former state of accord. I merely wished for you to be aware of my sincere remorse, that I have finally attained understanding, and that I harbor the fervent hope that at some future juncture, when Zoe reaches maturity, I may embody the kind of father towards her that you deserved me to be towards you. I observed my granddaughter, so minuscule, so intrinsically innocent, so blissfully unaware of the profound sorrow that permeated the interactions of the adults surrounding her. May I hold her? Jamal inclined his head in assent. He lifted Zoe and gently passed her into my embrace. The young child regarded me with those expansive, inquisitive eyes. "Hello, my little one. I am your grandmother, Era." "Gamma?" "Yes, Grandma." A smile graced her lips, and something within me began to soften. However, this was not the familiar yielding of vulnerability as experienced previously. This was something distinctly different. It was indeed love. Yet it was love accompanied by the establishment of boundaries. It was love fortified by a sense of protection. "Jamal, I genuinely appreciate your visit. I acknowledge and value your apology, yet it is imperative that you grasp a fundamental truth. I am no longer the identical woman you once knew. I shall no longer compromise my inner peace to remain an integral part of your existence. I comprehend. Should you desire Zoe to know me, should you wish for her to cultivate a relationship with her grandmother, it must transpire according to my stipulations, characterized by mutual respect, clearly defined boundaries, and an absence of expectations that I will resolve your dilemmas or subsidize your life. I concur. I seek none of those things. My sole desire is for my daughter to experience that which I cherished as a child, the presence of a loving grandmother. Because despite my failings as a son, you are an exemplary mother, and I recognize that unequivocally now. We remained in companionable silence for a brief interval. Zoe playfully manipulated my necklace. Jamal observed us, a complex admixture of sorrow and burgeoning hope evident in his expression. "We can embark on a new chapter, Mama, not a replication of the past, but rather the genesis of something novel, something imbued with greater healthiness. We can endeavor, but it will necessitate a considerable duration, and it will demand that you demonstrate through tangible actions, rather than mere pronouncements, that a genuine transformation has occurred within you. I shall endeavor to do so. I offer you my solemn promise. Refrain from making promises to me. Simply execute." Jamal departed approximately an hour later. He furnished me with his new contact number. He divulged the address of his current residence. He extended an invitation for me to consider visiting them at some future juncture when I felt ready. That evening, seated upon my diminutive balcony, gazing out at the vast expanse of the sea, I reflected upon the entirety of the events that had transpired. The individual I once was, the person I had evolved into, the profound suffering I had endured to rediscover my own voice. Would a reconciliation of our relationship ever manifest? The answer remained elusive. However, if such an event were to occur, it would undoubtedly be characterized by a distinct dynamic. It would unfold according to my terms, with my established boundaries firmly in place, and with my inherent dignity preserved. For I had finally attained a profound understanding, a revelation that had necessitated 68 years to fully grasp. Self-love is not an act of selfishness. The act of safeguarding oneself is not an exhibition of cruelty. And at times, the most courageous manifestation of love entails the profound act of letting go. Presently, a span of 6 months has elapsed since that consequential evening at the restaurant. I reside in